Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan. Today we are breaking down the San Francisco 49ers 2024 offseason. We're going to go over all the departures, the acquisitions, and also review their draft picks. And at the very end of the video, we're going to break down the 2024 49ers schedule and also give our record predictions as well and how we think the Niners are going to do this season. So be sure to stay tuned for the entire video to see that. Before we get into it, be sure to like, subscribe, and also tackle that bell to get notified when new videos come out. We have videos coming out every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And when the season starts, we're going to have weekly prediction videos for the 49ers every single week throughout the season. So be sure to ring that bell to get notified when those videos come out. Here are the 2023 team stats for the San Francisco 49ers. We got these statistics from Pro Football Reference. I would say just statistically, Niners were probably one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL last year. When your worst spot that you've got is 11th overall, and that's just from turnovers. And everybody can throw some turnovers, and even two. I think that Minnesota Vikings game, what did Brock Purdy have? He had three turnovers.
He had two games in a row with 3 turnovers, I thought.
Yeah, I'll confirm it here in a second. So really kind of very lopsided, I would say, just based off a 2-week stretch. But there really wasn't anything that this offense couldn't do. The only thing that really slowed them down was themselves, and that was when they got hurt. Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, and Christian McCaffrey were all hurt and missed some time this couple of games. I think in the middle of the season. But defensively, then too, on top of that, they were able to back it up as well. I know their passing stats were a little bit higher, 14th overall. I also think, though, too, they were winning in nearly all their games. So teams just had to throw against them. Like, you go look at these I'll pull up these Cardinal stats as well when they played the Cardinals. They gave up 257 passing yards to them in week 4, and then they played them again where they scored 29 points. And then actually they gave a lot of rushing yards in that game. So never mind. Still gave up 436 total yards. I just say that because the Niners were winning that game from the kickoff to the final whistle that was blown. And so that's why I don't really have too many concerns overall on their defensive side. It is fascinating to see what happened on their departures, but also their acquisitions. We'll get to that here in a second. But Ryan, I've been talking for a second here. What were your overall thoughts of the Niners here? What do you think were some of the areas that the Niners needed to improve going into the 2024 season?
Yeah, when you have the second best offense consisting of the 4th most effective passing offense, the 3rd best rushing offense, you only allowed 34 sacks. It's a little hard to have too many gripes with this offense specifically. And even on the defensive side of the ball, they were just about top 10 in every category except for passing yards allowed, but which you said, like, they probably gave up a lot of 4th quarter passing yards because at that point it didn't matter. So it's hard to nitpick. The one thing I will say, this offensive line I felt like could have been better, especially in crucial situations. And then also I think you look at what happened when they lost Deebo Samuel and Trent Brown against the Browns, which those are 2 all-pro caliber players. So, you're not going to be able to have a next man up mentality necessarily because you're not replacing those guys with a backup tackle and a backup wide receiver. That just really seemed to derail their offense as a whole. And so getting more depth on this team, on this roster, I think is going to be pretty critical. And we'll get into some of the moves that they made here in a little bit, but I think they did a decent job of that. And then defensively, I really don't think that there's too much else that they could do. If Dre Greenlaw doesn't tear his Achilles running onto the field, then they win a Super Bowl.
That's still wild that happened.
Yeah.
Of all things.
Yeah.
And even, too, I'm curious now, and we'll talk about that now. Actually, let me even make sure that they didn't let him go. I don't think they did.
I believe he's still there. But.
Yeah. But it's going to, he tore his Achilles in the middle of February. It's like his 2024 season, I think, would be close to being in jeopardy. He'll probably play eventually this season, but that's going to be fascinating to see just how he comes back, probably come out on the PUP list. But still just wild that even happened. That was such a weird game. But the thing to me, I think you hit on something as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about it here as we go on. But let's move on, though, to the departures. But the thing to me, I think, was going to just be their overall depth. But I think when you put first stringers up against first stringers, I think the Niners probably the best team pound for pound. But depth-wise, I think that was going to be the thing that seemed to put them back. And it's kind of an unfair complaint just because when you have the best player in nearly every single position, when those guys get hurt, obviously the team is going to suffer a little bit of it. And so when I say that, though, I look at this here in depth-wise, and you mentioned this defensively. I mean, they lost Chase Young, Sebastian Joseph Day, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, Klein Farrell, Randy Gregory, and even a couple other linebackers as well. So a lot of guys in that front seven. A lot of these were role player guys, yes. But I think it came to show how good that like how good that talent was on the defensive side of the ball, that they could rotate a lot of these guys in. And that was the thing to me when doing this research was like, wow, that was a lot of guys. Now, we'll get to the acquisitions here in a second, and I think they're fine. But it was still just a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
And it just brings in those questions of like how will those guys mesh together kind of now in this 2024 season? Because they had things working. They had things working in 2023. I understand why you can't keep all of them. So,
yeah.
But that was just the big thing I noticed.
Yeah. And then also Isaiah Oliver and then Logan Ryan and Tishwan Gibson are still free agents as well. So like that'll be interesting to see kind of what this secondary does. But again, those were what?
Sorry, how'd you say his name?
Oh, is it Tashawn? Tashawn?
Yeah, it's just Tashawn. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Tashawn Gibson. Usually you're the one with trouble with names.
I know. Even I'm like, I asked Tashawn.
Tashawn. Yeah, Tashawn.
Okay.
Anyways, besides the point. That secondary, losing some depth pieces there, be interesting to see kind of what they did to replace them. And actually, speaking of that, let's move on to acquisitions. So starting off, a lot of defensive acquisitions, looking at Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens to just kind of replace some of those front seven guys, getting Devondre Campbell from the Packers, and then also Rock Ya-Sin, Isaac Yiadom. I don't know if I said that one right either, but like all of those guys, you look at what they lost, they kind of replaced everybody, at least personnel-wise, on their roster.
Yeah. Especially too if you go look at Malik Collins and Jordan Elliott as well. Malik Collins had a big role in that Houston Texas defense.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Elliott also had a big role at the Cleveland Browns defense as well. So I do like the Devondre Campbell pickup. He's a Falcon alum, so I like seeing him be successful. He had a good time at Green Bay coming over. And I think that they got some interesting pieces in the secondary as well. I'd be curious to see how they mesh together. But that all being said, though, we've been saying this during the entire this entire offseason. To recap, is it's definitely kind of solidified for me. I'd much rather have a great front seven and a so-so secondary. Not saying the 49ers don't have a good secondary, but their front seven is so freaking good and historically have been. I even think too. People that they lost, yes, I think that they've replaced them fine. And I don't expect them to have that big of a dip in their defensive production, especially too when it comes to the pass rush and their sacks. I think that takes away a lot of pressure from the secondary as well. Offensively, as you mentioned, Chris Hubbard, Colton McKivitz coming over, providing just some more depth, maybe trying to improve that offensive line a little bit, because that's an area I think they do need to improve in as well. They did also address the offensive line in the draft, getting Dominic Puny as well. I think that's going to be interesting to see how he fits into this offense and kind of how that storyline of just the offensive line development. Because obviously Trent Williams, he said at left tackle, just trying to figure out if there's any way they can improve the other four positions. I think the thing that's going to be interesting here, because we are recording this July 3rd. So we mentioned that just because who knows what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk. And so I think going and getting Ricky Pearsall, I think he's going to be a great complement to this 49ers offense. And so he's the kind of guy as well. I think he's kind of a chameleon when it comes to your offensive system. We were saying this about him and Ladd McConkey, is they're just guys that can get separation on their own. And that works nearly perfectly in every offensive system. And with how many studs you have on this offense with Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, if Brandon Ayuk is still there, that's already a great receiving set, a skill position player set. I think he provides a little bit more consistency if one of those guys goes down. So that's why I think it was a great class for the Niners to go and get a receiver that really fits them well. And I like him more than like Xavier Leggett, who was taken next, because Leggett's he has his one trick pony, while Ricky Pierce. Well, Ricky Pearsall, I think, can complement all the guys together at once, even if some of them go down.
Yeah. That to me, Xavier Leggett was kind of like a Debo Samuel Debo Samuel's a better receiver, like route runner, catcher, that aspect. But like Xavier Leggett,
things that you need to be a good receiver. No,
well, yeah, but Xavier Leggett he's 6'2", 225, ran a 4.3, and is like really good after the catch. He just struggles with some of the other aspects of the game.
Yeah.
And so that to me would have been more of like a direct Debo replacement. But Ricky Pearsall, whether Debo goes or Ayuk goes, Ricky Pearsall is a guy that you can rely on to fill in at either role. So let's move on, actually getting into it, to the offensive depth chart here. So as you can see, you have the three wide receivers right there: Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall. Ronnie Bell actually made some plays last year for them. Jawan Jennings as well. Jacob Cowling was a 4th-round pick as well in this draft class, who a lot of people were pretty high on. So I think those are going to be the 6 guys that they end up rolling with. I don't really see how anybody else could crack this top 6, barring injury. There's not really too much to elaborate on there. This offensive line, I am curious. Dominic Puny is slotted in as the backup right guard. He was the left tackle at Kansas. He projects more as a guard. So kind of seeing where he fits in, I think will be interesting as well. And then they did also bring in Chris Hubbard, and then
and that was actually a mistake on the last slide. Colt McKivitz must have re-signed, so I apologize about that. But yeah, so Colt McKivitz was already there with the Niners, so he signed with them. But still just bringing in Chris Hubbard here as maybe more of a swing tackle, but just providing some more offensive line depth. So that was just an error on that last slide. But in general, though, I think that to me is going to be the storyline, because obviously we know who the skill position players are going to be, know who the starting running backs are going to be, the starting QB, etc. But yeah, this offensive line, where can they improve? How's Dominic Puny going to do? Is he potentially jump over John Feliciano, or maybe move in there over Aaron Banks? Potentially, and that's just where it's going to be, because I think there's an area where they can improve, is that offensive line, especially on the interior offensive line. So having some more competition in there, that's going to be the thing that's going to be fascinating to watch for the Niners team, because when you're already so good, when you're essentially at like a 98 overall, it's like, how do you get to that 99? And you're looking for just that little bit of improvement. And so it'll be interesting to dissect and probably highly overanalyze during the training camp.
Yeah, definitely. So, and then you got Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Guerrero, I thought was a nice solid pickup to add to that running back room. So very, very interesting to see what they're going to do offensively. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. Really not a lot of change draft-wise up front, but you look, Malik Collins is slotted in. You have Yetur Gross-Matos slotted in at behind Nick Bosa. Leonard Floyd as the right defensive end there. Dre Greenlaw is in the starting lineup still. So it'll be interesting to see whether he plays or not.
Yeah.
Jordan Elliott. So you can definitely see like some of the new faces in this depth chart, definitely making their name known as well. But once you get into the secondary, you still have Travarius Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, who I believe missed most of last year with an injury. Jair Brown, Renardo Green, the rookie, slotted in at one of the cornerback spots, and then I have no idea.
Dio
Lenore, I feel like is how you probably pronounce it. But anyways, like not a whole lot of change on the back end of this defense, just kind of slotting in Renardo Green, I think, in there. It'd be curious to see what everybody's role is on the front seven. One, with Dre Greenlaw's injury, but two, just bringing in a lot of new faces.
Yeah, no, and that's where I think as we've talked about, essentially the offensive line, the offense is going to be the same. And there are some new pieces as well that were brought in as depth pieces. So I think really just kind of feeling those out, feeling who's going to be the backup. Maybe can any of these backups jump over? What's going to happen with Dre Greenlaw? I'm going to guess It is my prediction now in July. I need to see some stories, but just based off the math though, and just knowing like just Achilles injuries. I mean, who was the Rams? It was Cam Akers, right?
Yeah, he was never the same.
Yeah, he was never the same. So he tore it in mid-July, and he came back for the playoffs, so like 6 months, and that was unheard of at the time. I know everybody's talking about Aaron Rodgers. I don't think Aaron Rodgers was ever going to be able to really actually come back last season. So I still think it's at minimum 6 months, but then you're talking another couple months of where you're still feeling out, trying to probably get into game shape. So we're probably still looking at like November. My unexpert medical opinion, like Dre Greenlaw is probably not going to be coming back until Thanksgiving time, I would think, at the earliest. Just because, especially too, if they're doing well, why rush him back? Like why risk? Because he's also supposed to be a key part of this franchise moving forward as well. And so you can have him healthy for the playoffs, then that'd be great. Maybe he'll do a little bit better in the Super Bowl this time, but sorry, I couldn't help myself. But I think let's move on though now to the 2024 schedule. And so starting off, hosting Aaron Rodgers on New York Jets on Monday Night Football. That will be great. What's funny about this, too, is historically the U.S. men's national team, whenever they play soccer games in San Francisco, I think they hate the grass. So then I find it funny that the NFL's been sending Aaron Rodgers to, like, his first game back. It's going to be at San Francisco. Just food for thought. But then at Minnesota, at Los Angeles Rams, that's going to be the big game for me penciling in. Then New England, Arizona, at Seattle. Technically, there's 3 division games in here, but there's not. The Rams game to me is going to be the biggest one. That's one I want to put an asterisk on to definitely watch. But they should beat your Patriots. They should beat Arizona. You heard it here first. I think Arizona's going to be better this year, potentially even pushing 500. I think I had them at 8-9 on my video. They should beat Seattle pretty handily. They'll have an easier time beating Seattle than it will be Arizona. You heard it here first. So,
I agree with that, actually.
In general, though, first 6 games I think are very possible they come out 6-0. It's very possible. The Rams game is going to be the question.
Yeah. I mean, I also think Jets in week 1, anything can happen, but I like San Francisco's chances in that one. But yeah, 5-1, 6-0, most likely. Starting off the second column, though, they have Kansas City, which will be a tough game. I'm actually very surprised that is not a primetime game, but that's neither here nor there. Dallas on Sunday Night Football, they should handle Dallas pretty easily if they stay healthy.
They're like Dallas is kryptonite. Like they match up so well against them. And by that I mean just a better football team, really, just in general.
Yeah. And so week 9 bye, which is good. You want to have a later bye. And then at Tampa Bay, Seattle, at Green Bay, at Buffalo, and then Chicago to kind of close it out. So you got a few tough games there after the bye, mostly at Green Bay and at Buffalo, especially week 12, week 13. That's going to be some colder weather games, not quite in the heart of winter yet, but I think that'll be around Thanksgiving when things are cooling off. So 2 tough road games there, but to me, those are really the 2 toughest games so far, back to back.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting here because they're playing, I think, all of the division winners in this. I'm sorry, I'm just reviewing it. Outside of Seattle, no, Kansas City, Dallas, Tampa Bay, yes. Green Bay, no, actually. Buffalo, yes. So not as many, but they have 4 division winners from last year. And I think they should be able to handle all that. That Kansas City game will be obviously a big one to pencil in. And so, but I'll be curious to see that. Really, what's going to be interesting to me is going to be that week 12 to week 14 stretch. Obviously, Kansas City is going to be a big game, but I think they're going to beat Dallas. Tampa Bay shouldn't be an issue.
Also, I usually point this out. Week 6 is a Thursday night game. They're going into Kansas City with a few extra days of rest, so that bodes in there. And Kansas City has to go to them. That's a home game.
Yeah. I would actually say, to expand on my point, actually, not just even week 12 to week 14, but week 12 to week 17, I think that is going to be a very interesting stretch because they're going up against, in my book, all legitimate playoff contenders here. While to see how Chicago looks on paper, they should be they should be in the playoff hunt at minimum for a wild card spot. So, but week 12 to week 17, that's going to be the heart of their season. Really, I think that's going to make or break a lot. They should win a lot of those games. I mean, there's no reason why they shouldn't win those games, but it's still going to be tough. And that's going to really play a big part then too on home field advantage, but also as well just the division as well. The Los Angeles Rams, they get punched in the mouth in the beginning of this season. They have 6 tough home games. Sorry, 6 tough games to start the season. The Niners games, in my opinion, there's probably their 6 toughest games are going to be this stretch towards the end of the season. So there's going to be big fluctuation, I feel, of home field advantage, division implications as well, playoff implications going up against all these teams. Then they wrap up at Arizona. So
yeah, and Arizona will, in my opinion, be playing for pride at that point. But it'll be really interesting just to see what San Francisco it comes out this year, because I could see them maybe regressing if some of these offseason moves haven't panned out. But I could also see them being just as good, if not better, than they were last year, especially if they're able to stay healthy throughout the entirety of the season. So let's move on to our record here. So I have them at 12-5. I think this is one of, if not the best team in football. I think you look like the Ravens are up there in this category. The Chiefs are up there in this category. So I kind of really think it's the NFC. Like, the NFC is theirs to lose. I don't like. I think Detroit is a contender. Green Bay is a contender. But this right now, San Francisco is still the top dog in the NFC. They haven't been able to be knocked off quite yet. I know some teams were close, but I like some of the moves that they made. I think this is going to be a really good team in 2024.
So yes, they're still the team to beat, but I wouldn't say. Well, I guess it depends on how you look at it based off what I'm about to say. So I still think they're the team to beat, but I also don't think it's fair to say the NFC's is theirs to lose. I mean, because the Green Bay Packers improved immensely. I think they have a legitimate chance to be the number 1 overall seed coming out of the NFC. The Lions have also improved as well. Those are the 2 top teams coming to my mind as right now. I'm trying to think. Then technically Dallas, but I also think they've regressed. Philadelphia, I think they also regressed heavily, but on paper, they're like in theory, those can be the guys. I would say it's probably going to come down to those 3 teams. Also to the Rams, though. I mean, let's not forget the Rams. I mean, the Rams surprised everybody. Now, can they back it up? Because the Niners have backed it up now for 5-6 years now, minus the COVID year, but like 5-6 years now, of backing it up of just great performances. So that makes sense. And I say that, I apply that to the Rams. I need to apply that also to the Lions. We just saw the best Lions team ever. Green Bay Packers have a really young team. So those guys need to back it up. But that being said, though, if they do start to back it up, I think they can easily beat the Niners. Like it's not like the Niners are head and shoulders above them like how they were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think that the Niners, they're the NFC champs. I think a lot of their moves were lateral, and then I think they got their offseason moves were lateral, and then they got better in the draft. I think Green Bay can beat them. I think Detroit can beat them. I still think San Francisco is the top team, though. I also in the AFC, I think the Ravens are better than the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are still the team to beat in my in that division or that conference. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think on paper, though, the 49ers stack up with just about anybody.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I'm probably being too nitpicky, and that's what I said at the beginning. It's probably unfair, to be just nitpicky on it. But it's that's a fair point. They've been the NFC champs now for was last year. Who was it the year before that? The Eagles.
The Eagles.
But then it was I guess the Rams. But the Niners have been there consistently. For the past 5 or 6 years. So I think it's eventually going to be their time. And so we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But that's pretty much. I mean, they were a couple plays away from winning the Super Bowl. It's
they really should have won. They got you throw in the Dre Greenlaw injury, the uncharacteristic Christian McCaffrey fumble. I still think you go for it on 4th and goal in overtime, especially with Patrick Mahomes. Giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, I think, is concerning. But I don't know. That's, again, neither here nor there. They ended up losing the game, and that's what will be written down. So not to make 49ers fans relive it all. But
trust me, I know what it's like to lose a heartbreaking Super Bowl. So it's they just got to just do it again. I think they have the team to do it. So
yeah,
they're at minimum. Also, I mean, like they will make the NFC conference. But they're one of the top 4 teams in the NFC, but probably honestly in the NFL. So I think that they'll at least be in the conference championship game going up against either. I'll say this now: they're going to be going up against the conference championship against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, that to me is probably the matchup. I could see Detroit sneaking in over one of those teams, but
that would be the fan favorite for sure.
Yeah. So let's go ahead, though, and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the San Francisco 49ers 2024 offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think their record is going to be in 2024? And other than that, we will see you guys next time.